President, I have heard from literally thousands of my constituents who have contacted my office in unprecedented numbers with fears about a Justice Department headed by Senator Jeff Sessions as Attorney General of the United States. My constituents and Americans all across the country are concerned about the independence and integrity of the Justice Department under President Donald Trump. We are only 3 weeks into the Trump administration, and what we have seen so far has been alarming. We have 3 years and 49 weeks left to go in President Trump's term of office. And we have already seen in 3 weeks President Trump issue an illegal and immoral ban on Muslim refugees. We then saw President Trump fire acting Attorney General Sally Yates from her job overseeing the Department of Justice, an action reminiscent of Watergate's infamous Saturday Night Massacre, because she refused to defend in court his unconstitutional and un-American executive order. Sally Yates' job and the job of the entire Department of Justice is to uphold the rule of law. The Attorney General of the United States is the lawyer for the people of the United States, not Donald Trump's personal lawyer. It's called the rule of law, not the rule of Trump. But it is the rule of law that is at stake when the nomination of Senator Sessions is in question to run the Department of Justice. I have told my constituents that Senator Sessions must be judged based on the totality of his record as a United States Attorney, as Alabama's Attorney General, and as United States Senator. A review of that record, including 2 days of hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee, demonstrates anything but the commitment to the equal and impartial administration of justice and an independence from the president that we must demand from the nation's top law enforcement officer. Senator Sessions' record spanning decades in public office reflects hostility to important constitutional rights, hostility to laws intended to protect people of color, hostility to laws intended to protect women, hostility to laws intended to protect the LGBTQ community, and hostility to laws intended to protect immigrants against discrimination and violence. Senator Sessions has fought against civil rights efforts. He has fought against protecting voting rights. And as a U.S. attorney, Sessions tried to prosecute 3 civil rights workers who were helping elderly and disabled African-American voters to cast absentee ballots. During his 1986 judicial nomination hearing, he called the Voting Rights Act an intrusive piece of legislation. And in his testimony to the Judiciary Committee, Senator Sessions would not commit to continue the Justice Department's efforts to challenge restrictive state voter ID laws. Senator Sessions has fought against comprehensive immigration reform, against criminal justice reform, and against common sense gun control measures. As for a woman's right to choose, Senator Sessions has said, and I quote, "I firmly believe that Roe versus Wade and its descendants represent one of the worst, colossally erroneous Supreme Court decisions of all time." At his confirmation hearing, Senator Feinstein pressed him on this statement, asking him whether it was still his view. "It is," Senator Sessions replied. It is simply unimaginable that we would have an Attorney General of the United States holding such a view of Roe versus Wade and the rights of women to control their own reproductive health. Roe versus Wade is the law of the land, and it should remain that way forever. Mr. President, I would also like to address the actions last night by the Senate Majority Leader to silence the remarks of my colleague from Massachusetts, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Coretta Scott King was attending the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston when she met a divinity doctoral student at Boston University in 1952 in Boston. And 1 year later, Coretta Scott married Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., as they took their degrees from Boston, now to begin a cause down in the South that became a national and international movement. The two shared their life and cause that would change the world. The voices and legacy of Coretta Scott King and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. are as much a part of Massachusetts history as the American Revolution, John Adams, and President John Kennedy. What Senator Warren was doing last night was standing up for equal justice the way Massachusetts has always stood up for equal justice, the way Senator Ted Kennedy stood up for equal justice. We have a deep and proud history in Massachusetts of fighting for what is right. The abolitionist movement was born in Massachusetts. In past generations, when young women wanted the right to vote, a group of committed activists in Massachusetts formed the suffragette movement, and they changed the United States Constitution so that women can vote. When young people in Massachusetts were upset with the voting rights laws for minorities in America's southern states, they became the Freedom Riders, and they changed the laws of the United States. I make these remarks from the desk once held by Massachusetts Senator Edward Brooke. Senator Brooke was the first African-American elected to the Senate. He was a Republican, and he was also a civil rights activist, and he also received his law degree at Boston University in Massachusetts. From the Founding Fathers to the movement for universal health care, to the first same-sex wedding in the United States, and to the Senate floor last night, Massachusetts has always been at the heart of America's quest for equal justice. Leader McConnell used an arcane Senate rule to silence Senator Warren. But the people of Massachusetts and all people of good conscience will never be silenced when confronted with our moral responsibility to speak out. Senator Warren deserves an apology for being silenced when she attempted to share this very relevant, very powerful part of our national history last night. And the American people deserve to hear the important words of Coretta Scott King. So here they are. Senator Thurmond, I write to express my sincere opposition to the confirmation of Jefferson B. Sessions as a federal district court judge for the Southern District of Alabama. My professional and personal roots in Alabama are deep and lasting. Anyone who has used the power of his office as United States Attorney to intimidate and chill the free exercise of the ballot by citizens should not be elevated to our courts. Senator Sessions has used the awesome powers of his office in a shabby attempt to intimidate and frighten elderly black voters. For this reprehensible conduct, he should not be rewarded with a federal judgeship. I regret that a long-standing commitment prevents me from appearing in person to testify against his nomination. However, I have attached a copy of my statement opposing Mr. Sessions' confirmation, and I request that my statement, as well as this, be made a part of the hearing record. I do sincerely urge you to oppose the confirmation of Mr. Sessions. Sincerely, Coretta Scott King. Coretta Scott King was right in the 1960s. Coretta Scott King was right in 1986. Coretta Scott King is right today. Based on the totality of Senator Sessions' record, I have no confidence that he shares a commitment to justice for all Americans. I do not believe he will fight to defend the most vulnerable in our society. I do not believe he will stand up to President Trump when the time comes, as it surely will come. The great Robert F. Kennedy and the U.S. Attorney General himself once said that every community gets the kind of law enforcement it insists upon. We must insist that our top law enforcement officer upholds the law for all Americans. I do not have assurance that Senator Sessions will meet that challenge. I will be voting no on Senator Sessions' nomination this evening, and I urge all of my colleagues to do likewise. Mr. President, I yield back the balance of my time.